Welcome back to Face the Math podcast again. This time we're joined by somebody completely different, but equally exciting, equally incredible as some of the other people we've already spoken to. In case you haven't seen any of the other things that we've been posting out this week, just to let you know, we are Beatfreeks. We are an insight and engagement agency based in Birmingham. And this week we're putting out a lot of content and having some conversations with amazing people around Mental Health Awareness Week. So if you go onto our Instagram page, onto our Instagram IGTV, you'll find other podcasts that we've had conversations with Forward Thinking Birmingham, mental health organisation here in Birmingham, and a couple of artists and incredible people talking about the media and mental health, that kind of thing. But today, very excitingly, we are joined by Niyah Campbell, who works for the Institute of Mental Health at University of Birmingham. And we are going to be having a conversation a little bit about kind of how research is really important in terms of shaping some of the services, some of the experiences that we might have, and talking about why it's important that young people have a say and kind of get engaged in that sort of research, and then just any other exciting and interesting things that come up. I've seen Niyah speak before. If any of you were at our Headspace event, I think it was maybe about a year ago at BAM in Birmingham, you will have seen Niyah speaking there, and it was amazing. We got a lot of great feedback. Not to gas you up too much and make it awkward or any pressure.
No pressure, no pressure.
But you know, it's true. That's why we've invited you to come back and speak to us. So it's actually really our pleasure to have you here and to have this time to chat with you. So let me do a quick intro as to who I am and who everyone here is, so that we know who we all are, because that's always useful. So my name is Matilda. I work for Beatfreeks. I'm a consultant at Beatfreeks. I work with young people and clients and kind of help bridge the gap and deliver amazing projects. And I'm joined by my incredible colleague, Chloe.
I thought you were just about to say my incredible Chloe. I was going to be like, yes, thank you.
You are an incredible Chloe.
But yeah, so hi, my name's Chloe. I'm Beatfreeks community engager. I of course sit within the community team, and my job essentially revolves around making sure that everything that we do serves young people, serves our community, and that the community members within Beatfreeks are feeling engaged, feeling productive, and feeling like that we are actually listening to them. So yeah, that's my job. So shall I pass it down to Tender? He's below me, and here.
You're like
here to me.
You're just like there. Yeah. Thanks, Chloe. My name's Tatenda. I also work for Beatfreeks. I am the storyteller for Beatfreeks, and so essentially I kind of work closely with the community to be able to highlight and spotlight some of the amazing work that they do as well. Because I think the most important part about our company and what we do is the young people that we get to impact and like get to work with and collaborate with. So that's always really, really good, and just being able to spotlight that is amazing. So yeah, that's kind of my job, really. Yeah.
Yay! Amazing. So Niyah, I'm gonna pass over to you and ask if you can just intro who you are, what you do, and just anything you want to tell us. Oh, I just fixed my headphone. Did you see that? That was like a magic trick. Anything you want to talk to us about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Niyah Campbell, and I am the Youth Participation Lead at the Institute for Mental Health, which is based in the University of Birmingham. I'll get on to what the Institute itself is and what it does in a bit, I suppose. But my role as Youth Participation Lead is to essentially take charge of and ensure that young people are engaged in our activities as a research institute. In the recent time, so since I've started, that's the main focus of that has been like the development of a youth advisory group. So young people who come into university and advise us on research from their perspective as people who've lived experience. But again, I'll get onto that further down the line. In terms of who I am, I'm a Brummie, which is why I'm very passionate about young people in Birmingham. Grew up in Erdington, and yeah, pleased to be here because, you know, seeing some of the work that Beatfreeks do has been really great along the way. I've gone to a lot of your events, obviously spoke at an event a year or so ago. Had really good samosas at that event, but yeah, I'm pleased to be here anyway.
I remember those samosas. I actually, it was myself and former colleague at Beatfreeks, Eddie, who went to collect them, and we drove from central Birmingham, big bus where our offices are, and we drove all the way to West Brom, just because we know that you got to travel those
It was worth it.
I'm gonna spotlight this by saying I'm actually from Wolverhampton. I'm not from Birmingham. So before you start to come for me, I'm going to let you know that West Brom is Wolverhampton to West Brom is where you get good samosas. As soon as West Brom turns into Birmingham,
Oof.
the samosas are okay.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Don't worry, you can come for me in the comments about that. But we drove all the way to West Brom and we picked up this massive box of samosas. I remember that event really well. We had them out just in the box for people to take. And then it got to the end of the event and I think we'd maybe bought like 100 samosas. And we definitely had like, I don't know, a third of them left by the end. So myself and Zeddy both packed up loads of the samosas to wrap up to take home and then just like took a big box of them to a group of homeless people in the city and gave them out because we just had so many left and we were like, these definitely can't go to waste.
Yeah, I think people are too modest. They were good, man.
Amazing. So some of the things that I really am interested in is what does the Institute of Mental Health do? What is its aims? And then also a little bit about your youth advisory group, like what was the process in that being set up and what's the intention of having that group there?
Yeah, sure. So the Institute itself was set up a couple of years ago. Like I say, it's part of the University of Birmingham. So the whole idea was to have a collaborative approach or interdisciplinary approach to addressing youth mental health research. So we've got researchers within the team that work from all sorts of disciplines, and the disciplines that you wouldn't traditionally think look at mental health. So disciplines like geography, sport and exercise, philosophy, social policy, as well as the traditional ones that you'd imagine like psychology. So the idea there to have a wider spectrum of experience and knowledge and perspectives when looking at mental health. And the focus on youth mental health is because Birmingham has the biggest youth population in Europe, I believe, which is something that I'm very proud of, as I'm sure you are. It's a very diverse population here as well. So as far as a location for such an institute goes, it's the perfect place. So yes, we've got this interdisciplinary team that work together to put together bids for research projects and like have more expansive ideas, so to speak. And the reason behind having a youth advisory group is because service user involvement is really, really important. So what I mean by that is, yes, you've got these experts who've done years and years in the field and know so much, have so much knowledge about the phenomenon of certain mental health disorders, but their understanding of what it is to be a young person will wildly differ from what a young person's understanding is. Yeah, that being the case, we have a youth advisory group. The youth advisory group was recruited when I started in October. There were existing members that were there before I was there, and then in March 2018, we did a second drive of recruitment to kind of have a more representative group, and we did that by Twitter, as well as me reaching out to some organisations in the region I knew work with young people, because you have this term hard to reach, which is so often used in academia, and that's because typically people that work in universities, the reach is to students. Those are the young people that they can reach. And then people that are outside of that are deemed hard to reach because they're not interested. I felt, well, are they aware of the opportunities? And have they said no yet? If they say no, then we can say, okay, they were hard to reach. They weren't interested. So we spoke to some local organisations and asked them to put news of this to their networks. And then that way we had applications from a wider network than we would have just centrally through our Instagram feed. So yeah, that being the case, we now have a YAG that consists of 18 members. We have monthly meetings where they can come and engage with researchers. So as researchers are developing ideas, they discuss the ideas with them and say what they think's rubbish, what they think's great, and that feedback is incorporated into the research design. And then there's a whole host of other things that just crop up. So speaking at events, we've run workshops on youth involvement. We've spoken with YAG members at events to discuss service user involvement to engagement practitioners. So it's a whole host of things that they do, and it's ever changing.
you.
I love that so much. Like it's making me think of at Beatfreeks we have a youth steering committee, which is very much a very similar thing, and they come on. They're basically like a board that are made up of young people, and they feedback on all the things that we do. They get like exclusive access to know about company information, and they feedback on it, and they really tell us like that is not good, like change that now. And we really listen. And having, like, I know for me, having actually been on the youth steering committee for Beatfreeks before I obviously worked for them, this was a couple of years ago, I know what that experience meant for me in terms of like empowering me, training me, developing me, and making me feel like I have a voice. What did you find was like, I don't know, have you had a young person that said to you, like, I was really expecting the university to be like this, or I was expecting my experience to be in this way, and actually I've been really amazed, or any of those stories of like breaking down those barriers and making that everything just feel so much more accessible?
Yeah, so the term hard to reach is literally one of my biggest pet peeves, because it's never qualified. So people say hard to reach, and then you say, okay, so what do you do? And then they say, and then once they say you know you got them, because if it, like for me, if there's something that I think is really, really hard, I can't do it, then I need to tell you what I tried to do that led me to that decision. Often people have come to that conclusion before they even tried, and that's what leads to, you know, large groups of the population being excluded from certain opportunities because they're labelled as hard to reach, and then the onus is put on them, which is not good at all. But anyway, so that being the case, again, trying to come back to the original question, a lot of the AG members we've worked with over the past 2 years now, well, coming up to 2 years now, the progression from when they first came in and they felt very nervous to where they are is that the main progression is that they feel very comfortable, and they feel comfortable because they know that there's someone fighting the corner to make things accessible to them. So people build confidence in that way. But then there's also stuff around like demystifying what research is. So for some people, and I would have been exactly the same before I did any kind of like A level or anything like that. If you say research, I think of white coats, test tubes. And that's not the fault of anyone who hasn't had that experience. It's again the onus on institutes and academics to shift that narrative. So as time's gone on, the youth advisory members have learned a lot about what research is. So even yesterday we had a session where we were talking about consent, and one of our researchers kind of gave like a 20-minute brief, and they kind of said, you know, normally this would be like 2 weeks of lectures, but I'm going to compress it into a 20-minute briefing. And if you have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. Let me kind of explain the history of consent and why it's important for people to consent to studies and stuff like that. So those kind of like small micro training opportunities have led to people having a better understanding of what research is.
Love that. Like that's definitely how I feel, and it's been in some of the conversations I know myself and Chloe will have had with young people around. There will be someone fighting for you, fighting your corner. Sometimes it's just a case of finding where those people are. And it's been such a pleasure, like for me particularly, to kind of speak to yourself and Bob from Think for Brum, and people like that who are working in that industry. And I've been blown away by the dedication to making the experience of accessing mental health services for young people a better place, a better experience. And it's definitely filled me with a lot of hope. So I love to hear that. Amazing. So I was also wanting to ask a little bit around, I guess, thinking about research. And I think we can take this quite specific in you know, research around youth mental health. I know that Beatfreeks as an organisation, we do quite a lot of research. People may have seen that we've done from Youth Trends, where we survey 1,500 young people across Birmingham around loads of different topics, mental health being part of that. And we take that survey, we crunch the data, we do all of that kind of analytics, and we then get young people to feed back on all of that information and create a report that is accessible in its language, accessible in its graphics, its visuals. And we share that out to organisations, to government, to councils, you know, to young people, to all of that, in order to make this idea of research accessible for young people. And that's something that we really believe in strongly. And I know that you at like the Institute of Mental Health are also kind of working towards. And so I guess the question really is, what more can organisations do in order to make sure that they are keeping things accessible, but also what are the steps that young people might be able to take in order to, I guess, feel empowered to question something if it isn't accessible? Like, how can we as young people and as organisations kind of navigate that?
Yeah. So it's quite interesting in that in the wake of everything that's happened with COVID-19, one of the positives that I've been able to pluck from this is that in the public engagement sector, there's been a lot of conversation around this topic, well, multiple topics to do with involvement. So it's really like, it's been kind of weird, because before these were like 6 monthly meetings, whereas now they're like weekly meetings and everyone's engaged in all their best practice and whatnot. In like as far as what needs to be done, listening to young is first and foremost what's important, and this is something I'm going to speak about at another online event this Thursday actually. So there's been an explosion in terms of like resources and materials about do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. And originally these were like top-down things, so you'd have institute organisation like NIH are involved, produce guidelines, then everyone looks to them for guidance on what to do. Whereas now it's kind of like it's been more of a we as practitioners are all collating our resources. But what I've said is ultimately you can have all the resources in the world, but the context is so much more important than the resource that you have. You can have, you know, so obviously we're now doing online as opposed to before we'd been like meetings at the university. So, you know, when everything first changed, it was like, right, are we going to use Zoom? Are we going to use Microsoft Teams? Are we going to use this? Are we going to use this website where you can have like these amazing post-it notes? And are you going to use this where you can use a whiteboard and they can all be interactive? And it was so stressful, to be honest, because I was like, oh, what's the best thing to do? So I spent 2 weeks basically like really anxious about it. And then I just came to the conclusion that what I'd done so far had been listen to young people, do it as basic as possible, and execute something that they found really, really easy to engage with. So in the end, it was like after 2 weeks of fretting about, you know, what software I was going to have to download to my laptop, I basically sent a Zoom invite out to all the young people, said, right, we need to find a way to work going forward. Let's talk about it together. We sat down, we spoke for an hour. They said, right, just keep it as simple as possible. Zoom meetings, we'll discuss things, you take notes, and then that can be taken away. And we'll build from and that was really, despite the amazing conversations with so many different practitioners, the most useful feedback that I had.
What I love is like bringing a young person, a group of young people in when, like, if I'm working on a project, for example, an event, let's say, I haven't got any ideas about what this event is going to be. All I know is it's going to happen on this day and it needs to do one thing. I don't know, maybe it's like a mental health event, Headspace, that we've done in the past. That's all I know. And I'll bring in a group of young people and go, this is for you. You decide. I don't have any ideas. And it's really incredible, like how that it can just take it into a completely different space, a different level. And so that thing about listening from the very beginning, at the very start of your thinking processes in this work, I think is so crucial. So yeah.
And I think as well, it's also really important to note, just in regards to what I do, that's easy to do. But to be fair, and to give a fair reflection of how research works, in research, a lot of time, there are variables that have to be the way they are, because, you know, research dictates it. So, you know, therein lies a difference, because you've got a spectrum of involvement effectively. You've got co-production or user-led research, where it's like, okay, let's start with a blank sheet, tell me what you want, and I'll help you, you know, mold it. And then you've got like consultations / collaboration, where a researcher might say, right, I've got this plan for my study. I need to know what you think of these specific things. Now, in service user involvement, for me, the big gripe is when people misbrand things. So people asked certain questions, went away. Yes, they may have feedback, but then they say, "Oh, we co-produced it." And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not quite co-production, like, because co-production is now the hot word. Like you say, you co-produce, and everyone's like, "Bang, that's gone." That study's gone from a 9 to a 10 now because it's co-produced. But clarity around that is what I always find most important. So I always say, I'd rather say this is gold standard involvement than misbrand something as co-production. And in research, I think that gold standard involvement basically is being clear about why the restrictions are in place. So when you go to a group saying, well, this is what it looks like, this is what the justification behind it, and this is why these change. These are the things that I want your input on, and these are the things that we can change. And once we know whether we're going to change things one way or the other, we'll come back. Because sometimes people have a really good idea, but it's not feasible. And so it's not selling a dream and saying, right, okay, you know, we've spoken to you and now this is yours, because oftentimes researchers can't do that. They have, you know, a certain level of ownership over the study and have to run it in a certain way. But being clear about and what the boundaries are and what the actual range of change is most important. So I just wanted to hop on that one because I think, you know, oftentimes I definitely do think ideally everything could be co-produced and start from like ground zero, but practically that isn't always the case. So just to give a true reflection of what it is.
And actually it's like, I guess I hadn't really even considered in that I don't work in a kind of research world personally. So I'm come from a background of theatre. So to me, it's like everything's going to be created like from the base down, base up. I mean, so yeah, I can definitely understand that. And I think for me, like the words I kind of almost that you didn't say, but I took from what you were saying is be clear, be honest, and be authentic. And if you can do those three things, the engagement that you have with young people will be meaningful. Young people will have a good experience, and what you create from that will be effective and successful. I think that's like a really great 3 words that we can take away.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think authenticity is probably the most important thing when working with young people, to engage them, because like whether you're coming to them as an individual or on behalf of an organisation, I think authenticity is of course the most important thing when you're working with young people, and being able to tell them this is what the project is, this is what we're asking for, and this is what you're actually going to get out of it. And I think one of the biggest sells to young people is them knowing the impact and them knowing the actual direct impact that their involvement, participation and research can have, not only on their community but on full-on institutes like your own, like the Mental Health Institute. And something which I'm quite interested in, because it's always been a really big selling point for us when we've been pushing Brum youth trends and even national youth trends. The fact that we're able to say in the past, you know, we've had Andy Street pledge and we've had different politicians and policymakers get involved. I'm kind of wondering for your institute and where you work, what is actually the impact that you know that certain focus groups and research from young people in Birmingham has had?
Yeah, so with the team, we're quite close-knit, so we know each other, we all work in the same corridor. So with that being the case, you often get like a lot of informal feedback about what's happened with certain bits. We have put in place a 6-monthly report now, so I'm collecting the information for that now. So the idea is, if you've worked with the YAG at any point, after 6 months or within every 6 months anyway, so you might have worked with them 2 months ago, but at this time point, you'll receive 5 key questions, which I sat down with the YAG and said, you know, if you wanted to know 5 key things, what would you want to know? Because ultimately, I want it to be accessible from both sides. I don't want the researcher to put off doing it because there's 10 questions and they don't really know how to put it across. And I want it to be very, you know, easy for them to answer the questions in terms of, if I was to ask you to your face, how would you answer, rather than I'm going to copy and paste this from the end of year report and go into the report. And also from the YAG members' perspective, over the course of 6 months, they may have worked on, you know, 20 or so studies. So if you have 10 questions and each question has like 4 paragraphs, and you end up with like a 50-page report, are they actually going to want that? So we're currently in the process of putting that together. Additionally, YAG members work with us on bid proposals, on grant proposals. So a large part of how research works is that you have an organisation as the UKRI, which is the UK Research and Innovation Network, I believe. May be wrong about that, but it fits anyway, so we'll run with that. So they will have pots of money that they are looking to distribute to research institutes that are looking to take research forward. So as a research team, we will put together a bid saying we want to do this study and this study and this study, and this is how the funds will be allocated. And YAG members are involved in that process.
I think this is kind of like a burning question of mine-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry that it seems really abrupt, but I was interested in it before the call, and I'm still interested.
Mm-hmm.
But like, of course, you do such amazing work, and you're really passionate about what you do, and you clearly have a massive impact on the young people that you're working with. And like, I'm just really interested about like, what is the effect on you with the work that you're doing? Like, what kind of impact has it had on yourself?
That's a good question. Personally, my career trajectory has been a bit wild in some ways. So when I was studying, I worked in care homes for children with behavioural difficulties. And I took a lot from that job. It's so interactive and it's so reliant on your interpersonal skills. And then once I'd got my degree, I was like, right, okay, paid 27 grand for it, so I better make use of it now. So then I got a job in research, and although I enjoyed it, I didn't really get the same feeling from it, because at the end of the day in research, and this is, you know, people that do research, all respect to them, this is just my personal perspective, but when you do research, like, you put so much like blood, sweat and tears into getting through the study, and then you write a paper, then you submit the paper, and the paper, you know, comes back with recommendations. And I'm not really that academically geared. I'm more of a like interpersonal kind of person. So for me, I didn't really get the validation from that. So then it took like a year out to kind of think what I wanted to do after I'd done a couple of years as a researcher. And then this role came up, which I was very lucky because my partner told me about, which she actually found out about through Beatfreeks, I think. So yeah, shout out Beatfreeks. It's an amazing loop, eh? Just an amazing loop, and here we are. But yeah, so yeah, this role came up, and I was like, well, you know, it keeps me within touch and distance of research, but then I'm working directly with young people, so sure, why not? So I took the role, and yeah, like 2 years later, like I'm just like, this is definitely going to be my future, which is really, really weird, because I've done like some mentoring, and there's a program, an educational related program called Envision, where school kids come into the university and we kind of help them launch a social action project. And I was speaking at an event for them towards the beginning of the year, and one of the questions was, when do you decide when do you know what you want to do? Because obviously most young people have no idea what they want to do, and they feel really nervous and stuff like that. And I literally did them like about 2 weeks ago. Like literally 2 weeks ago, I was looking at my job and I'm like, you know what? I could do this for another 30 years, I reckon. And so for me, it's a massively validating experience, because I like to bring out the best for people. I think that I'm that kind of person. And also, like, it's a great pleasure to see the development of the young people that we work with as well. So for all the selfish reasons, I love my job because it makes me feel good. And I get to help people along the way. So that's the impact it's had on me, really.
Amazing. Thank you so much for chatting to us, Niyah. It's been so eye-opening and heartwarming and enlightening as well. It's been a real pleasure for all of us. I've really enjoyed chatting to you and hearing about everything that's going on. Thanks, Chloe, to Tender, for being here with us, taking part and joining me. And thanks to me for being here too. It's been really great. So, and also thanks to everyone that's watching, that's listened to all of this. If you have any questions, get in touch at any time. You can comment under here. You can message us on any social media. You can go to beatfreeks.com, BEATFREEKS. You can see it up there somewhere. if you need to get in touch with anything. And we'll also be giving out all the information about all of the organisations, the social media that you can follow to be in touch with Institute of Mental Health at University of Birmingham, and there you can kind of find out more about what Niyah's getting up to, etc. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope everyone's taking care of themselves, taking a bit of time to rest and recuperate as it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And just remember that self-care is important, and it starts at home and it starts with you. So take some time and take a screen break. Stop looking at screens. Go and look outside. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.